I was the last attempt, the final shot at a son in a family of daughters. My parents had tried 3 times before me, and when I finally arrived, I think they imagined a perfect balance. The boy among the girls, the missing puzzle piece. But life isn't always that simple. Growing up, I was never truly part of my sister's world. They loved me, sure, they looked out for me. But I was always on the outside looking in, a tag-along, an afterthought. My closest sibling, Jane, was just over 4 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she was the one given the job of watching over me. At first, it was innocent enough. I was the kid she had to drag along to the park, the one trailing behind her at the mall, the little brother forced into a world that never really felt like mine. I knew even then that I was more of an obligation than a companion. But it was through this forced attachment that I met Dave. At first I resented it, but then I noticed something. Dave was different. Like me, he had an older sister who didn't always want him around. So we gravitated toward each other naturally. We didn't just become friends, we became brothers. From the time we were kids, we were inseparable. School, recess, video games in my basement, listening to our sisters talk on the back porch while we plotted adventures of our own. We got our first jobs together at the local movie theater, stayed up late sharing dreams about the future, and even ended up at the same college. I can't think of a single part of my life where Dave wasn't there. And yet, even as kids, I noticed something. Dave looked at my sister differently. At first, it was just an innocent crush, the kind that every kid has at some point. A glance that lingered too long, a nervous laugh when she entered the room. I teased him about it, of course, because that's what little brothers do. But for Jane, there was only ever one person. Mark, the golden boy of our small town. The perfect student, the natural leader, the guy who made every parent nod in approval. He was strong, confident, effortlessly charming, the kind of guy people wanted to be around. And Jane loved him. For years, they were the couple everyone talked about, the two people who seemed destined to last forever. And while Jane was closer to Dave and me than to our other siblings, she never once saw Dave as anything more than the annoying kid who had to tag along. For Dave, it didn't matter. He never stopped looking at her that way. Even when Mark went away to the military, even when Jane started college, and the space between them grew, I should have seen it coming. The perfect opportunity for a change. But Dave did, and in that space, Dave moved closer. That's when the world around us changed, and the people we once were began to fade into something new. The way she started showing up at our job while Dave was working. The way I'd come home to find them in the basement, both pretending they just happened to be there at the same time. The way Dave started staying later and later, long after I'd gone to bed. The way they both said nothing was going on. I didn't want to see, but I wasn't stupid. I told him to be careful. I told him Jane was still with Mark. I told him this wouldn't end well. But Dave was in love, and love makes fools of us all. About a year into college, Dave told me that he and Jane were dating and wanted me to know before it became public. I was a little surprised, not because I didn't see it coming, but because I was shocked that Jane would leave Mark for Dave. Up until that point, she had only ever talked about Mark. But I told Dave that if they were happy, then I was happy for them. I jokingly warned him that if he hurt my sister, I would bring the doom hammer upon him. But I knew that would never happen. Dave worshipped my sister and would sooner cut off his own arm than hurt her. I should have been happy for them. I should have felt like my best friend and my sister coming together was a perfect, poetic ending to our story. But something felt wrong. I should have known that day. The past would collide with the future. I should have realized that not all bonds are meant to last. Some of them break. And when they do, they take everything with them. But over the next 3 years, Dave didn't just prove me right. He exceeded every expectation. He was always there for Jane, standing by her through every challenge, every triumph, every fleeting moment of doubt. He became more than just her boyfriend. He was her anchor, her unwavering source of strength. And as time passed, he became more than just a guest at family gatherings. He became family. Laughter and late-night conversations solidified his place among us. And before long, we weren't just welcoming him in. We were calling him brother. It was more than a title. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the inevitable. We all knew where this was heading. Then came his graduation day. The air was electric with celebration. But Dave had his own moment planned. As the sun dipped low and applause echoed in the background, he turned to Jane, dropped to one knee, and held up a ring. A collective gasp filled the air. Jane's eyes brimmed with tears, her breath hitching as the world seemed to stand still. And then, with a trembling smile and a voice thick with emotion, she whispered the only answer Dave had waited for. Yes. Tears, cheers, celebration. For a moment, I let myself believe in the fairy tale. Our families together, celebrating what felt like the inevitable. I brought my girlfriend, and we ended up in the basement. The same basement where Dave and I had grown up, where we had talked about everything from comic books to heartbreaks to our futures. In the dim light of my childhood basement, everything I thought I knew shattered. At first, my date and I were only half listening to the conversation between Jane and Mary. It was casual at first, teasing remarks, quiet giggles, but then the tone shifted. Jane's voice became low and urgent, her words dripping with hesitation and something else. Guilt. Mary's voice carried an edge. How could you let it get this far, Jane? She demanded, as though trying to shake sense into someone already unraveling. Jane's reply came softer, laced with something like regret. I didn't know how to stop it. Everything happened so fast. When he proposed right there in front of the entire school, I panicked. I just said yes. And then the truth came out. Jane had never really let go of Mark. She had been seeing him on and off the entire time she was with Dave. While Dave had spent years worshiping the ground she walked on, pouring every ounce of his love into their relationship, she had been holding on to Mark in secret, keeping him close, keeping her options open. Because that's all Dave had ever been to her, an option. Dave wasn't her first choice. He was her safe choice. She wasn't with Mark permanently because she didn't want to be a military wife waiting for letters and counting the days until he came home. She didn't want the life of uncertainty, of sacrifice, of long nights spent wondering if he'd make it back in one piece. She wanted stability, security, someone who would always be there. And Dave, my best friend, my brother, was her safety net. And when Dave proposed in front of the entire school, she had panicked. She hadn't said yes because she wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. She had said yes because she had no idea what else to do. She was never afraid of hurting him. That wasn't what kept her up at night. No, what she feared was Mark's family finding out about the engagement before Mark had made his final decision, whether to re-enlist or return home for civilian life. She wasn't choosing between two men she loved. She was waiting to see which life suited her better. Mary's voice was sharp, almost scolding. Jane, you need to make a choice now. You know how small this town is. This isn't something you can keep hidden forever. A lump formed in my throat. My date squeezed my hand, her eyes wide, but she didn't say anything. Because what could anyone say to that? I felt sick. Everything I knew, everything I believed about my sister, was crumbling right in front of me. The woman who had practically raised me, who I had admired and respected, had been lying, not just to Dave, but to all of us. The betrayal sat in my chest like a stone. My date whispered, "What are you going to do?" My first instinct was to storm upstairs, to grab Dave by the shoulder, to tell him everything. But my date hesitated. She's still your sister? This could tear your whole family apart. I drove her home that night, the weight of what I had learned pressing against my ribs, suffocating me. My heart pounded as I replayed the conversation in my head, Jane's words ringing in my ears. I had two choices. I could betray my sister, or I could betray my best friend. Either way, I lost. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dave's face. The way he would look at Jane, the pure love in his eyes. The way he would defend her without hesitation. He didn't deserve this. And Jane, the person that raised me, that I followed around and looked to for guidance, I didn't know who she was anymore. The next morning, I found her in the basement. She was relaxed, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. When she looked up and saw me, she smirked. "What's up? Here to tell me about your date?" I almost laughed at how casual she was. She had no idea what was coming. I took a breath. "I heard you and Mary talking last night." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. She set her phone down slowly, swallowing hard. What, what are you talking about? I clenched my fists. I didn't want to play games. I know, about Mark, about Dave, about everything. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For the first time in my life, I saw my sister speechless. Then, barely above a whisper, she stammered, It's not as bad as it sounds. I let out a bitter laugh, sharp and hollow. You've been stringing Dave along for years while keeping Mark on the side like some dirty secret. How exactly is that not as bad as it sounds? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her eyes darting to the floor, as if the right words might be hiding in the carpet. Her voice, when it finally came, was weak. I was confused. Confused, I snapped, the words slicing through the air. Confused about what? Whether you wanted to spend your life with the man who stood by you through everything or the one who shows up whenever it suits him and vanishes when it doesn't? Jane's eyes flared with something I couldn't quite name. Anger, guilt, desperation all tangled into one. Her voice broke when she said, I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did, I said, my voice low but firm. You let it happen. You made choices. And now you have to deal with them. She looked away, her silence louder than anything else she could have said. And in that silence, something shifted between us. Something heavy, irreversible. She took a step closer, her voice lowering. Are you going to tell Dave? I stared at her, waiting. Waiting for remorse. Waiting for regret. But I saw none. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry she got caught. I felt my chest tighten. I had idolized her, trusted her, and she was asking me to keep quiet, to protect her. I took a slow breath. You have 2 days. Her brows furrowed. What? I kept my voice steady. You have 2 days to tell Dave the truth. If you don't, I will. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't. I didn't respond, because we both knew I would. Her face crumpled. Please, you don't understand. I turned my back on her and walked away. She called after me, her voice breaking, but I didn't stop. For the first time in my life, I saw my sister for who she really was, and I had never felt so alone. The words left my mouth like a death sentence. 2 days. You have 2 days to tell Dave the truth, or I will. Jane's face crumpled, her lips parting as if she wanted to plead, to negotiate, to find some way out of the inevitable. But I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out of the basement, my footsteps heavy with the weight of what I had just done. She called after me, her voice cracking, but I ignored her. I'd already seen the truth, and there was no going back. The first call came from Mary. Don't say anything, she said, her voice clipped, urgent. This is family business. Blood is thicker than water. You don't betray your own like this. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. 2 days. She huffed in frustration. You're being unreasonable. Jane and Dave need to figure this out on their own. You have no right to get involved. I laughed bitterly. No right? I listened to our sister admit she's been lying to the one person who has never done anything but love her. And now I'm supposed to pretend it didn't happen? Because she's family? Mary didn't answer. Over the next 48 hours, the messages came in one after another. My sisters, one by one, piling onto me, insisting that I was making a mistake, that I was blowing things out of proportion, that giving Jane an ultimatum was cruel. She just needs time. You're being dramatic. You don't understand how complicated this is. But I did understand. The deadline passed, and Jane, she did nothing. I met Dave at our usual spot, a quiet diner just outside of town, the kind of place where the waitresses knew your order before you sat down. I could barely look at him. This was the man who had stood beside me my whole life, who had never once let me down. And I was about to break his heart. At first he laughed, shook his head, told me I had to be joking. But as I kept talking, explaining, apologizing, I saw the shift. The light in his eyes dimmed, his hands tightening around his coffee cup. His breath grew shallow, his jaw clenched so hard, I thought he might break a tooth. And then silence. He stared at the table for a long time, his face unreadable. I had no words to fix this, no way to make it easier. So I just kept saying, I'm sorry. After what felt like a lifetime, he stood up. He didn't yell, he didn't cry, he just walked away. And I knew in my gut that I had just lost my best friend. That night, I stayed at my girlfriend's apartment. She warned me the next day would be brutal. She was right. When I stepped through the front door of my childhood home, I felt the tension like a physical force. My mother sat at the kitchen table, her eyes red and puffy, clutching a tissue in her hands. Mary stood behind her, arms crossed, her expression dark. Jane was nowhere to be seen, but I could feel her presence. I barely had time to open my mouth before they attacked. How could you? Mary spat. Do you have any idea what you've done? You betrayed your own sister. Mom looked at me, her voice trembling. Why didn't you come to us first? We could have talked about this, decided what was best. I scoffed. Decided what was best? Since when did we sit down and vote on the truth? Dave wasn't family, Mary snapped. Jane is. I shook my head, my hands trembling with barely contained rage. We treated Dave like family. We called him family. But now that Jane's lies are out in the open, suddenly, he's just some outsider? That's bullshit, and you know it. For the first time, my father spoke. His voice was calm but heavy. You weren't wrong, but that doesn't mean you were right either. I turned to him, desperate for some kind of support. So what, I was supposed to keep quiet? Watch my best friend walk into a marriage built on lies? He sighed. I don't know, son. But now, everyone's hurting, and there's no undoing it. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling sharply. And then I found out the worst part. Dave had told Mark's sister, and word got back to Mark. That morning, he called Jane. She didn't get the fairy tale ending she had been waiting for. Mark wanted nothing to do with her. Now she has lost both of them. A few days have passed. Dave still is avoiding me, unable to separate seeing me and thinking about Jane. Jane has become the victim in my family's eyes. Everyone tiptoes around her like she's the one who was betrayed. They whisper about how heartbroken she is, how hard this must be for her. And me? I'm the villain. The brother who turned on his own blood, the one who should have handled things differently, the one who ruined everything. But here's the thing. I know I did the right thing. I know I stood by the only person who had never once let me down. But that doesn't change the fact that I've lost both of them. My father says this will all blow over. But deep down, I know the truth. Some betrayals never heal, and some scars never fade. So I ask you, did I do the right thing?